Our panelists this evening are going to be Greg Gialloreto, and he is the Director of Global Broadcast Architecture for QVC, so he's got his hands very full with a lot of juggling plates. Karl Kuhn at the very end.
Hello.
Senior Video Systems Application Engineer for Tektronix. Anthony Plosz here, or Tony. Tony's good. He's the VP of Engineering and Operations for WCAU here, and also has his hands very full planning for a move to shiny new studios. And our moderator tonight is Mark Mullen, and he's with Millersville University, so he will be asking our panelists questions, and they will be answering. If you guys have any questions, there'll be a Q&A at the end, so make sure you keep your questions handy. The floor is yours, sir.
Okay, thanks for all coming out tonight. We have a great panel here. We're all going to tell us what they saw at NAB, and I'm going to give them a couple of specific questions related to their area. I'm going to start out, Greg,
Yes.
with you, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, Greg, human interaction. How is human interaction using social media affecting your viewership?
Well, QVC, QVC US, in fact, just a little background, we have 7 QVCs around the world, and I'm in charge of their technology. So 5 out of the 7 uses social media to help drive viewership and, more importantly, help hold viewership. So the technology that we use in all of our markets is from Never.no. It integrates pretty seamlessly right into Viz. That is our standard graphics engine in all our markets. So we moderate it because you can't just let it run wild. And we ask pointed questions, our talent will ask pointed questions to drive the interaction. We also have integrated in all the markets what we call the big board, similar to the weather big boards and everything else, except they're custom applications that we have a gentleman who worked for QVC, Rob Frankel, who has built these from scratch. And these applications will, with Neverno's help, will query Facebook, Instagram, as well as our own forums. So we're able to pull ratings and ranking of products. We're able to ask questions. We're able to do polls, all interactively with the host walking over to a touch screen and scrolling through Facebook posts. So what we found with our analytics, through our analytic department who looks at our customers, we find that it retains our viewers longer. So, and I believe it's as simple as you do a post, you want to see it, so you wait. The other thing that we're doing, and you'll never hear about this because we're QVC and we have a stigma attached to us, we don't like to admit it, but it's the truth. We were the first broadcasters to do a simulcast on Facebook. And through our engineering department, they solved the Facebook problem that they were having that enabled us to be able to do that. So we do simulcasts on Facebook. And you'll see that starting real soon, you'll be able to see the direct Facebook feed coming out over our air on our 3rd channel, Beauty IQ. So if you go onto Facebook while watching and watch the simulcast of our Beauty IQ channel, you start hitting likes and sending hearts and all that, you will see them live in real time going across the screen. So we play a lot in the social space. The only place we don't use it is in Japan because of the regulations. So they're very strict on, the government is very strict on any perceived customer claims. And in Germany, we run into the same issue there, but they have to actually get a, it's all through the app. The person who posts has to approve it for air. And they do that in real time. So we're finding it's a very big driver for us.
Great. I'm going to ask a side question to that.
Sure.
Do you do like a demographics and age groups on some of that?
We do, and we find our core viewer is a woman, from an average income, I believe, of like 75 to 80,000, and we do have it broken down by specifics, but that seems to be our core viewer, and usually from the age 35 and up. We find that we don't aim for the millennials, and Facebook has pretty much become mom book, and I have two younger 20s children, and they're not using Facebook, so we find that that's pretty much our demographics that
That's
we're
great.
seeing.
What technologies did you see at NAB that integrated social medias and live television? Anything different than what you guys are already doing?
Unfortunately, this year at NAB, I was laser focused on two projects that I'm working on. One is QVC Japan. We're going full production 4K. So we're doing from camera through distribution, and we need to be live by December 1st of 2018. So my days were taken up with those meetings, so we were trying to pick an SI, trying to figure out compressed, uncompressed, for standard, trying to get a better understanding of which size network we need to support it and kind of future-proof us as much as you can. And the big thing is vendor readiness. I mean, everybody's saying, ST2110 is the way to go, and that looks like what we're going to be doing at this point, but that changes daily. But we need the standard to be ratified, and we need vendors who are able to deliver at that standard within the time frame we need. So that's pretty much, that was one project that took so much of my time at NAB, and it's very interesting because there's a lot of very strong points of view when it comes to IP infrastructures and what your network should be. But it seems like the common theme, and Tony might have a different point of view, I'm not sure, but it seems like the theme is it's 100 core, 100 gig at your core, 25 at the edge. That's where it seems like most of our core vendors are leaning towards. So it's kind of the path we're looking at doing. So we've been dealing a lot with that, and you hear a lot about, I'm sure you guys all read it, that 2110 is being tested and interoperability, and that's great if you're building an HD system. No one's tested 4K yet, the interoperability of 2110 4K. So they say it should work because it's a format, it's just 4 of HD, so it should work. But we all know, we still have trouble with SDI at times. So it's a challenge, and it's a very interesting and challenging project. The other one that's taken a lot of my time up was we're building a regional master control, and the region is Europe. So we're moving, so far we have QVC UK, France, Germany, and Italy. So we're taking the 3 European markets and we're moving them into the UK market for master control for their non-live playout and their live show as well. So we're looking at doing that in a virtual space. So we're looking at virtualizing our master control playout strictly for DR purposes. So if, God forbid, there's an issue in QVC UK that takes them off the air, QVC US can hit the virtualized playouts and still manage playouts for the European countries, or other way around, or one of the other Europeans could pick up playout. So we've been in a lot of conversations about that and what it looks like. And then once you start talking virtualization, then you start talking cloud. So it's got to put your video up in the cloud. So we're looking at hybrid, we're trying to determine what's the best way. Is it a private cloud? Is it a hybrid cloud? We have enough data centers that we could build our own cloud around the world. Do we want to do that? And then on that, once you start going down that rabbit hole, then you got to figure out how you're going to connect all your facilities around the world. So that's another project that's actually getting some traction, is for us, a global broadcast network that will be managed by our broadcast, not our IT groups, but our broadcast groups. It will ride alongside our corporate IT network, but it will be separated. So Rich works with me. So like Rich and his team will be managing that network in the US, and we'll have, basically pops all along the way in all our other countries. So that way we can move big files quickly when we need to, instead of counting on like a Signian, because we're looking at 300 megabytes connectivity between all the countries. So if we need to, we can actually stream live, at least a good solid HD show. So that's where I spent my NAB. So this year, there's a lot of technology out there, a lot of cloud, a lot of virtualization is hot, as well as IP. So unfortunately, this is I've been going to NAB this was my 21st year at NAB in a row, and I didn't walk the floor, and I really missed it, because I love walking the perimeter. I love finding the small companies, building the very cool cutting edge technology. And at QVC, we have found some very interesting, that's how we found Neverknow. When we saw them, they had basically a card table in the corner. That's how we found Zeus, Obor, where Jim works. That's how we found them. That we have, now that's a global project as well, but another group's taking care of that one. So it's, so I missed that this year. I didn't have that opportunity.
Question, with thinking in Europe, multiple languages, how's that handled?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because what we're finding with England, the UK moving out of the EU, that hurt my project, because now we're not just a broadcaster, we're a retailer. So now at this point, no one knows the laws. So the content is all originated in country. It will just be managed and played out, and the live streams will pass through the UK. But so the language isn't too much of an issue, and a lot of the master control operators in the UK speak multiple languages, so that helps for QC purposes. But where we're running into problems now, and none of the lawyers can tell me, is am I allowed to move the servers out of the country? Because there's rules about where the channels originate. And now that the UK isn't part of the EU, it's considered another country. So what we're trying to figure out is tax laws. So now if the if the UK is broadcasting QVC Italy, do they have, and the server isn't living in Italy, do they have to pay taxes in the UK?
Sorry I asked.
Yeah, so it's so sometimes the technology is the easiest part. You get the lawyers involved, it becomes a different game, especially when you're talking about tax and tariffs, and so that wasn't part of the plan. We didn't expect that to happen. At least I didn't when I started this project a couple years ago. So it's a challenge. Sure.
You had a pretty deep one. But I'm gonna back up, and one of the things you said, you were on the floor. I'm gonna just personal experience. I found a product years and years ago, Teradek, was just when they just did a launch outside of NAB, and I went to it just on a whim. I'm like, I'll go see what this is like. Since then, a couple years later, I bought a box and I bought several other of their units, and they work great across my campus network. Sending signal back and forth when I don't have fiber, if I'm just using, an IP-based transmission. And again, back to what you said, I was the first person on campus to use 10 gig, and they were like, everybody and I'm part of IT as well, and they're like, well, why do you need 10 gig? Everybody else is fine with 1 gig. Why do you need quality of service,
Yeah.
And I've had issues where I'm going and I'm sending, it might be a 5 meg stream. So I'm taking up, that much chunk of the 1 gig, but as soon as you get everybody else on that and there's no quality of service, there's issues with that 5 meg chunk where it starts to break apart. So, I mean, IT is just working alongside the IT guys to try and find a way to get that signal, through, because can be tough, can be a challenge.
Definitely.
I think you answered the other question I had for you.
Oh.
The IP technologies that provided potential solutions that, I mean, it's hard because you didn't get on the floor, but,
Yeah.
but thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Karl, I'm going to move on to you next, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you something a little bit different. And moving off of what Greg came up with, cloud architecture, how's it affecting signal processing? And is it moving towards a cloud-based service as well?
Yes, but before I answer that good question, I'd like to make sure that everyone knows that Millersville is now our newest student chapter in the entire SMPTE organization. So thank you, Mark. I appreciate you doing that.
Thanks.
I'm on the board of directors at SMPTE, so when I came up to vote, it was a unanimous vote, so that was great. And I'd like to put a challenge out to everyone sitting in this room, since this industry has obviously been good to all of us, or else we wouldn't be sitting here. Think how you can support the next generation, what you can do at Millersville or in any other way, because we need younger people to realize this is a cool industry. Whenever I speak at STEM events, to middle school, high school, or even speak at universities, I stress the point that the creative part is the obvious part of this industry. Everybody gets that. What they don't get, there's a business behind this. There is technology behind this, and SMPTE is the technology part. But by a student realizing there's the business and the technology, along with the creative, you can't ignore any one of those three throughout your entire career. It opens up incredible possibilities by being not just a creative, not just a geek or whatever. So stress that to young people so they see that there's a lot of places for them in this big organization. So however you can help, Mark, make that happen at Millersville, please do. But in general, we need more young people involved in this industry. So take that as a personal challenge. As far as the cloud, by being an application engineer with Tektronix, one of the cool things, I get to see a lot of organizations get to see the culture. It's definitely a cultural thing. Some organizations want nothing to do with the cloud because everything's internal, doesn't see the cloud until it leaves. Other organizations realize they're in the cloud anyway, they're running a global organization. So why not capitalize on the advantages of the cloud? The advantage of the cloud, I think, most fundamentally is the fact you don't have to own stuff. This is not an industry where we want to own stuff. We want to get a job done. We want to have compelling content that supports a business case. So by moving to a cloud, you're not buying hardware, not filling up racks. As soon as you do that, what you buy is obsolete. And you either have too much or you don't have enough. So by going to the cloud, you're going to getting out of capital expenditures, and you're becoming more elastic. If you have a big bubble of work to get done, you just buy more processors, more RAM, more hard drive, more bandwidth. But the challenge is the bandwidth. You have to get it into the cloud and get it out of the cloud. Once it's in the cloud, it goes anywhere you want it to go. But typically the cost structure is based on downloads, moving it in and out of the cloud. That's where they get you. Into the cloud, there's a little bit of a cost quite often, but out of the cloud, because eventually it has to leave the cloud, that's where the expense is. But I think what's happening more and more, as I always stress to students, this is a business, so how can we run it more efficiently? And I think for the challenge we have as technical people is, how does that affect us? So I think what we really need to do, I'm going to go off script here a little bit, is the fact, I think the elephant in the room is, we have to realize that IT people are taking over this industry. At the highest level of most corporations, it's IT people running the show. And even above that, it's the MBAs who run the spreadsheets. So I think we're doing ourselves a disservice in the industry as a whole by saying, oh, we're not business people, we don't worry about that stuff. I think we're going to become obsolete fossils if we keep believing that. We have to be able to, in any situation, executives don't want to hear about bit rates and packet loss and jitter and wander, and they don't want to hear that. What they want to hear about is quality of experience, what the viewer actually experiences. A good signal, no freeze frames, no blockiness. But fundamentally, whenever we talk to executives, how do we improve the business? What's the return on investment? Don't say, hey, I need test equipment to fix a problem. I need a test equipment to cut down on overtime. I need test equipment to stop service calls. I need test equipment to reduce churn. You lose a customer, you have to get one back. So I think we all need to look at ourselves and say, how do we communicate with business people? Because by going to the cloud, it is a business, but we have to prove that we have value. The days of being a technical guru and the company saying, whatever you need, just let me know, is long gone. We have to show value, and value is return on investment. What we do, what we know, is how to make this business more efficient. And I think the cloud is an obvious direction. It's going to be a migration for most people slowly. There's security issues. There's just the whole philosophy of how you do it. And I was talking to Tony earlier. One of the biggest risks we have in this entire migration is staff. Video people know video, IT people know the IT part. We have to meet somewhere in the middle. So I think training, mentoring, and what Tony said he's doing for his staff moving to down to Center City is investing in training. People aren't born knowing this stuff. No one's born knowing this stuff. By investing in your people is how you ensure you have a business when we're all said and done. You don't have a business if it's a black screen and no sound. Thank you very much.
Can I chime in one
Yeah,
little
go
second?
ahead.
Just to add on to the cloud. At NAB, I was lucky enough to sit in on a meeting for security, security, regular IT security for your broadcast network. And it was like, it was all the major broadcasters, like Fox, ESPN, all those guys. And they had a FBI agent, they had one guy from Homeland Security, and a CIA guy who was there, and we were discussing, it was a round table, discussing security. And it was a truly eye-opening and terrifying meeting, because they said no matter, there's people who hack in, who try to hack, everybody, all broadcasters, and there's people who are playing at it, and then there's people who are real, that know how to do it. And they say you can put up as much firewalls and you can put as much protection as you want, but the professionals will eventually get in. So the game isn't stopping them, it's recognizing when they get in. So how it goes back to the cloud is the cloud turns out to be safer. People always think it's more dangerous for hackers and losing your content, but it's actually more, they were telling us that it's actually a safer option, because when you're in the cloud, you're dealing with large companies, like Amazon and Alzira and all those companies that have a huge staff who are trained, to your point, trained in monitoring and looking for that intrusion coming in. So, so that was a very interesting point to me, because I always thought it was a risk, but it turns out to be a benefit as you're moving to the cloud. It's hard to explain that to upper management at times, but it turns out to be a benefit, because it's like looking for a needle in a stack of needles. So it's a little safer than at least I first thought. So I thought I would share that with you guys.
You actually make some great points. It's in smaller organizations, especially at a local TV station level, we put a lot of asks on all of our staff, on our maintenance engineers, on our IT, because we ask our IT guys, hey, you gotta know television. We ask our maintenance engineers, hey, you have to know IT, because they are so blended. And then on top of all of that, it's enough to thoroughly understand, the IP protocols, the stack, everything else. But then you have to also know operating systems, and then you not only have to know how they operate, but you have to know how they're secured. You have to understand how to harden them. And then to make matters even worse, you have to understand how all of that works together in a secure fashion. To get the necessary tools and training and everything set up for any local station, even a station in a good-sized market such as Philadelphia, I've worked in LA, it doesn't matter. It is extremely difficult to really accurately and thoroughly secure a local TV station. And like you said, going to the cloud, there's enterprise level systems out there. There's much better monitoring. They're doing data mining. They're doing everything that's necessary to probably not prevent, because ultimately everybody gets hit one way or the other, right? It's a a game of cat and mouse. It's like the best car alarms and you know, the rotating keys, the two-way authentication, everything that we have. It'll get cracked eventually. It's just it's not when or not if. It's a matter of when. So the cloud is an interesting proposition, and to kind of piggyback on what Karl was saying is trying to figure out how to show that value in the cloud is interesting for us, because I look at it, and one of my favorite sayings is there is no cloud, right? It's just somebody else's computer. Right. It doesn't matter if we're building our own data center. It doesn't matter if I go to the cloud. Yeah. It's simply not buying hardware. But then it becomes a very interesting calculation on, all right, I'm paying for computing power. How much computing power do we require? Well, some of our applications, quite a bit, right? We do a lot of rendering when it comes to the graphics departments. There's a lot of heavy computing needs. Things can get very costly, very quick, and I've seen cases where the cloud is not a great scenario because it ends up costing somebody so much in OpEx over the course of the year. I could have built 2 data centers, done everything in-house, and depreciated the assets, sweated them out as long as possible, and honestly been in a better place from a business standpoint. So it's always an interesting proposition in going to the cloud. I look at it long-term as a possible strategy for the disaster recovery, right? I think you've got a very interesting scenario where you could build your own private cloud across the globe and literally back up yourself, not have to worry about it. With the resources I have, I look at the cloud, and that was one of the most exciting things for me at NAB, was seeing the virtualization and seeing a lot of the manufacturers not just get into virtualization, but the types of virtualization technologies that they were looking at. I started to see the Docker logo out at a lot more vendors than I did before, and that's an exciting proposition because if nobody's familiar with how Docker virtualization works. It's essentially a quick spin up, it runs a task, and then that VM closes right back down. Most successful installation of Docker is Google. Literally everything that they do is done in the within a Docker container. So somebody needs a process to run. This Docker spins up, it executes a process, and it closes back down. And they do this millions of times a day. So their architecture is extremely fluid, it's extremely flexible, and to see some of our industry starting to go towards that Docker and other types of scenarios where,
Especially
you know what?
With transcoding, things like
exactly.
that.
I can do it here, I can do it in the cloud, I can buy computing time from you and do it over there because it's all in the dock. It's a really exciting piece.
Definitely.
It's actually different. 10 years ago, we were looking at buying a computer, and we sent it out and sent this process out to that computer, that one, had little farms. Now you buy, and this isn't, whether it's in the cloud or not, you've got VMware that's sitting there. Well, it's sitting there, everybody's going to hit it. It spins up, it does it, spins back down, somebody else hits it. So it's great. And I'm looking at doing that for us too. Is it worth it? Is it worth buying several labs and putting machines in several labs, or is it worth investing into more VMware and having the editing go off of that? So that's interesting too. And if people are off-site, if you're doing online students, how are they going to do it? So if you purchase something in the cloud where they can go and edit virtually, then that improves your online presence. You can hold classes in an online environment that you could never hold before, and everybody had to be on campus. Now you're expanding your reach. So.
For testing and training, it's a really appealing case to say, okay, I'm going to spin up this particular environment in the cloud, this this editing base, and you can spin it up, use it, and if somebody wrecks it, it doesn't matter, right? Just hit the reset button, and poof, you're back to square one, and there's no no risk of corrupting data or a lot of the other things. So it's very intriguing for test environments and training.
It's interesting that you bring that up because I've been doing a lot of research into the microservices for broadcast now that is available virtualized. So you can spin up instances for yourself quickly and easily, really, and it seems too simple because it's like drag and drop, and you can pick up services of encoding. You can do pop-up channels that way. If you needed to, wanted to do like a .1 or 2 pop-up channel, we're looking to do pop-up channels within our remote events. So we can do a different OTA channel opposed to our regular cable broadcast. But anyway, the microservices are a very interesting way of doing things. So it eliminates the hardware, and it puts everything up in the cloud for quick ramp ups and quick ramp downs, and it gives you a lot of agility. If you need to spin up additional channels, additional transcoding for over-the-top services or OTAs or Roku's or any of that kind of stuff. So and that's all virtualized.
And
it's the same thing. You pay for what you use.
And you're in a little different environment too. Not only are you outsourcing, but you're possibly offshoring some of the stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a whole different ball game that you're working with there.
Mm-hmm.
It's do we do domestic or an offshore, and back to the laws and the taxes that you brought
Yeah.
up. So I mean, there's a lot more that gets involved when you start getting into cloud computing, and it's tough, and it gets everybody. It forces everybody to come back together and work to try and create a solution, and it takes a while.
I think that one of the biggest challenges for our industry as broadcasters as a whole to really get into the cloud, and Karl alluded to it, is the cost of moving the data in and out, right? So data is the one thing that's common amongst all of us that it has, I like to say, it has mass, right? It has weight. It's difficult to move. It's not like doing the compute, doing those processes. Yeah, that's nothing. You send it to the cloud, you spin it up, they crunch the numbers, it gets sent back. It's very light, right? You can move that, it's flexible, you can move it anywhere. However, data, what we're working with, and my God, if you're going to be in 4K, I can't imagine how much storage, space you're going to require, but that's a lot of data, and then moving all of that in an effective manner becomes a big problem.
Yeah.
So now, you being in that situation, you have to really take a hard look at your storage environment, and this is another aspect of IT that, again, the burden is placed on all of us to know something that we're really not truly familiar with. But how do I move this much data? Do I move it into the cloud and then back out of the cloud? Do I go with co-location services where I have my own storage within a data center that sits next to a Microsoft Azure or Google, whoever my cloud provider is? I look at that scenarios, and then how do I do my data replication? Because I still want to copy back home. I still need to back it up. I still need to secure it. There's a huge lift there when it comes to the video content that we store.
And you're absolutely right. The cost to move video around on the network. I mean, before we decided to piggyback our global network on our IT footprint, just the last mile costs were staggering. I mean, I don't know how familiar you guys are with costs of satellite, monthly cost of satellite. That's considered cheap, and I gag when I see those prices compared to what it was going to cost to pay a level 3 to do this for us. It's staggering.
But for the stuff that you keep that's just floating around, it doesn't come in and out of your
It stays
your
within.
business. It stays out there, and you're not paying for that bandwidth because
No.
it's not going up and down.
Right, and it's our own. So we're paying a monthly fee, but we're paying it, basically to ourselves. And it's a ring, so it's good. We can go either direction in case something should happen. Because, everybody's digging holes and cutting fiber.
Can I weigh in on this? Currently working at a small, somewhat rural school, the last mile is the tough part.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
I can't even get a gig into my complex. That's the tough part, without spending a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
And if you go with somebody like Kinber, they'll give it to you, but you're paying for it.
But I can't get it. The infrastructure, the glass isn't even there where I am. So it's that difficult. And so we've had to reinvest in our IT infrastructure and start caching everything. And when you start caching stuff, then you begin to think, okay, I've got my stuff here and I've got it here and I got to keep it all talking to each other. But then there's always that one little piece that's not cached that we're waiting on.
How far away from you? How far away are you from like a local pop, or where does it end for you? How rural are you? I guess. I should say.
Quakertown. Okay, thank you.
No, I know where it's at. I'm just trying to think if, you know, because it's interesting. We're, you know, being a part of the Comcast family, we, you know, I get to hear some of the things that they're trying to do on when there's a new market opportunity. How do they deliver services there while they wait to pull the fiber?
Right.
Because there's obviously significant construction costs
We,
for
we've
them.
talked to Comcast, I
Right.
mean, that's our current provider, and we
Right.
talked about getting into a business class service, but they couldn't touch it.
But yeah, there's no fiber out there. Yeah,
There-
it's
there-
interesting.
there-
So I
there's-
always,
there's
I
no
would
glass.
always be curious in a situation like that, like what's the closest distance where you could get it and
Yep.
then build your own wireless bridge to your facility in the meantime.
Exactly, but to Carl's point, I mean, that's the, you know,
Yeah.
getting that data the last mile or 5 miles. And then, how do you harden that network? It's the weakest link.
Definitely.
How do you get redundancy and harden that network and,
The redundancy is the killer part. The hardening, that's
Mm-hmm.
easy.
okay.
It's, that you can take care of. But you're right, the redundancy
It's a trick.
is a trouble in a rural area.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, here we were fortunate enough, we were looking at a couple remote locations, remote, I mean, within the city, and getting truly diverse paths out was a little bit of a challenge, but again, we're in the city. Comcast has fiber all over the place, so it wasn't too horribly bad, but yeah, I can imagine that's gotta be a tough proposition out in a rural area.
Yeah, without getting fiber there. I mean, we've done similar to you. We've done point to point, you know, antenna here, go from downtown campus to main campus, and it only works so well.
Okay, caching is good, but it can only do so much.
Right, and we've talked about that for other things before, like Netflix, and is it worth it to have a caching server for something like Netflix when the students are taking all of that? you
Yeah.
know? And we never went through with it, just because of the infrastructure cost and support for it.
Well, I'll tell you our experience later.
But anyway, to keep moving on here, I do want to thank you, Karl, again, from beginning when he started. I've talked to Karl probably about 3 or 4 years about starting the SMPTE chapter at our university, and he gave me a couple of pointers on it, talked to me from time to time when I ran into him. So finally, I mean, it's taken a long time, but
Yeah, you were persistent.
yeah. And that's kind of the key for any of this stuff here. Wherever moving forward, you know, you have to be persistent for this stuff, because all the gear that we buy, it's gone. It's going to be different. You know, how are we transmitting video? Now it's over copper and SDI. What's it going to be in a couple of years? You know, it'll be copper and fiber or an IP-based transmission. So it's a whole different industry. And as these students are getting into it, they're learning one thing and they're learning another thing. You know, they're going and here's the copper that goes to the cameras. You know, 5 years from now, it'll probably, you know, here's the copper IP that's going into the cameras, not the copper SDI. But it's still a way to connect. They're still doing the same functional thing. They're connecting the camera to the switcher or to the truck or something. And instead of being regular SDI based, it's IP based. And some of them are going to have to learn. You know, if they want to get into this field, into more of the tech side, they're going to have to learn the parts of the IP structure. I'm going to digress just a bit here. If we go to the ATSC 3.0, that's a lot of IP-based familiarity in that. You know, and as that rolls out and that gets developed, you know, how much of that are they going to get exposed to, and how many people are going to go more to over the air as opposed to plugging in their cable TV or having something in their house, or what are the differences going to be? So we're in a really interesting change in the industry.
Mark, since
Yeah.
we have a panel of experts here, seeing how we can help you at Millersville, can you give us a 500-word or less explanation of what your program is at Millersville and see how we can help?
Okay, it's a starting program, but on the communication and side, we have a communication department that has a broadcasting side to it. And on there, there's a lot of creative students. Some are technically based, not too many. They're more creative, and it's interesting to see the two work together. You know, how do I get the stuff that's in my head out? How do I work, in an editing environment and get it out? You know, what's the easiest way for me to do it? And some of them are on the technical end. Well, how do I do this? How do I make this work to that work? How do I make these devices talk to each other? You know, and so I got a bit of both, and also tried to work. We have another program that's an applied engineering, which is almost like a soft engineering program, where they just take applications and they build things. And some of these guys are starting to have an interest in it. Guys, men and women, they're starting to have an interest in the program as well. So I'm trying to open it up. And it's a starting program, beginning program. And to go back a little bit further, there is a program called National Broadcasting Society that the students were, a lot of them were a part of. And they're looking for something else because they're not finding what they're looking for with NBS. And they go to the convention once a year. The regional stuff has kind of died off, but they're looking for things that they can interact with other students at times, interact with professionals, learn more about the industry. And the hard part is they're coming at it from a different view than we are. Their view, the millennial view, is just it's so different in how they approach things. And like you said, Facebook, they still use it, but not like the students did even 5 years ago. It's just I'm going to Snapchat that, and even Twitter is going. I don't use that as much, And there's other apps that they use, and it's just what's the quickest, easiest way I can get what's in my head out to everybody else. And that's kind of where the industry's going, and that's where broadcasting is following. And that's why I asked Greg the question about what are you doing with social media? How are you interacting it? Because it's not. It'll start to bring in some of millennials, but it's not. It's their parents that are doing it. That they're using social media to interact with their children, so they're getting used to it. And if you involve the broadcasting world into it, now you can do something to monitor and to almost like real time to like here's what I see going on in this section of it. So it's really interesting. And I'm sorry, I just went off on a total sidetrack there, Karl.
No, I'm glad you did that. So everybody needs to look in the mirror to say, what do you have in your career that you can give to Mark to help his students?
I appreciate
Simple as
that.
that.
So I'm going to get back to this. All
right.
Yeah.
But,
Thank you for
at
sharing.
NAB, while you're walking the floor there, hoping that you did get a chance, what IP-based technologies and cloud-based technologies interested you, and you're like, wow, hey, maybe we should pursue something like this? Yeah, go ahead.
I guess mine's more of a question, because this is something that doesn't impact QVC, but I guess it impacts more of my curiosity, and that's ATC 3.0, because I'm trying to say this nicely. Is it going to, and I guess it's more a question to you, Tony, as more of a traditional broadcaster, with that, is that going to help the broadcasters, or is it just going to become a cash cow for the owners? What's going to happen with that bandwidth that becomes available? I mean, it's a big ticket bandwidth. So you could put up one traditional broadcast, and then you could sell that remaining bandwidth off. Like you hear Sinclair talking about that it might not be for broadcast TV. I mean, are the Comcasts of the world going to buy it to compete with, or the Amazons, the Googles, are they going to buy it? Is it going to become a different way for your telco to be delivered? And on that same path, with 3.0, you can pick that up on your phone if they put the receiver in the phone. Is Apple going to put the receiver in the phone? Will they?
Enough to get them to turn on the FM.
Exactly, exactly. And how many people even know you have FM in it? So I guess I'm more curious, as somebody just watching from the outside, I see it. And for QVC, we have natural benefits for it to stay within the broadcast world. Because once you open up that back channel, that two-way communication, then in our world, you just opened up the money gates, right? Because now you can do buy buttons, you can do additional content pushed to what who's watching. So we can look to see what you bought over the last 5 years and send you like products right to your device. So for us, it's interesting and could be a moneymaker. But I guess I'm curious to what everybody in this room thinks as broadcasters. What path is this going to go down? Is it going to be just an additional revenue stream that goes more towards data? Does it go towards the mobile? Does it go towards the planes? Does it go towards you know, delivering updates from your iPhone? Like, what is it going to end up?
No, those are all really good questions, and
Yeah, I
you know,
just-
I mean, it's all out there, and how, along with how we can develop the standard for it.
Yeah.
And what's it going to be? And then on your phone, just like the FM. Yeah, it's sitting there, but we have no reason to turn it on. Why? Because we're charging you.
Right,
Why should you have that for free when we're charging you for, you know, your
Right.
data?
right. And to that point, how are the broadcasters going to make money on it, right? If you're pushing like, you know, Wi-Fi, like you know, cell service over it, for lack of a better term. You know, now you turn on your phone and it, you know, you pay.
Until somebody cracks the phone and said, look, here's a crack, and go out and you can turn on your FM receiver.
Yeah, but I mean,
You just
so
voided your
it's-
warranty.
I think
Yes.
long term, and this is purely my opinion, long term, everything is going to go data based. It has to. And as broadcasters, you know, really what's most valuable to us, and that's our content, right? Content is king. In this station, what do we really have of value? It's our local news products, it's our specials, it's our talent, it's our weather, it's the service to the community. That's our value, right? The airwaves are just a way to deliver that. So I think looking way down the road, you know, past the 3.0, I think ultimately everybody will get squeezed out of the airways. And we'll be, I mean, we may still be delivering over the airways, but it's going to be it's going to be data packets, and it's going to be a, you know, multicast somewhere. They'll squeeze us down more and more, and they'll repack us again in another, you know, 5 to 10 years, and then they'll do it again, and it'll just keep shrinking. And I think ultimately it's all going to be data packets. It's all going to be ones and zeros going down.
I said that when digital television started. The whole game plan was to eliminate over-the-air television. As we know it.
Yep.
Because Congress sees dollars. Every time they go through it,
You know, it's not just the dollars. It's looking at, you know, what do we get out of that spectrum, right? How much bandwidth do we have there? And look at, you know, in the 90s when the digital transition first happened, how much bandwidth, you know, was reclaimed by doing that. In the last repack, how much more bandwidth we have. And, you know, now with everybody having these things, how much is consumed over the air? And then you look at other possibilities. The wireless technologies are advancing very rapidly. I mean, now with in-house, you can get gigabit speeds wirelessly. That's insane. It's going to start to happen long distance, right? It's only a matter of time before our bandwidth wirelessly to the home gets up there. So we need a little more spectrum. They'll get it. And I think it'll be a better benefit because you'll not only get, you know, you'll have your fast internet, you'll have probably more television than you can shake a stick at, than what you currently have with a pair of rabbit ears. And then you might have emergency services. You would have other, you know, there's a whole slew of possible benefits you can do once you push out that one-way television broadcast and start getting data flow.
Thanks. I mean,
Again, that's just me talking.
no,
no,
it's
I agree. I
your
mean, there's so
insight.
much to think about
Yeah.
with that, and it's just,
Yeah.
you know, but emergency services, you know, you have to have a way to communicate with everybody. So you have to go down to the lowest common denominator. What do these people have with that, and you brought up the rural. What about rural, you know, in central, you know, part of the U.S.? You know, how much, you know, service is available there, and how many people there, you know, are like, oh, well, I'm far enough out, I don't need cable, I don't need, or I can't get it, so I'm still putting an antenna up, and I'm getting my television signal, you know, I'm getting my radio signal. And maybe it'll help, you know, when we do that, it'll help reach them, and it gives a different marketing opportunity as well. So that could be what drives it. How do we reach, you know, the smaller percentage of people, but we're still reaching them? So, yes.
Just filling in for Dave Sullivan, he had a topic.
Turn your mic on.
Oh.
Or speak into it. There you go.
Oh. Hi, yes, filling in for Dave. Dave wanted to discuss the low-power 3.0 because stadiums spend a huge amount of money for Wi-Fi services. I toured the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, and the amount of money that they have in that stadium to do Wi-Fi to the phones. And, you know, they have apps to find your kids. You can track your kids. You can let them go to the bathroom, that kind of stuff. A low-powered 3.0 antenna in a stadium if the cell phone companies deploy this, would be huge, because then they can push their own content in a small event, small stadium such as that. And I know he was looking at that.
Yeah, that's great for pushing it. It's when you're getting anything back. That's
Well,
when you have to
I think it
develop
would,
more and more, but
I think he probably would expand upon that. You look in the stadium and he has all his data boards and the ads, and then saying what Greg just mentioned, it opens up a whole nother doorway of, he could order a beer, buy swag.
Absolutely.
It would just, the floodgates would open.
Yeah, and if that's a two-way communication, you have your own in-house IP, but now instead of using, Cisco or whatever, the wireless devices, you're using something else to communicate and send stuff out, and the data that's coming back is lower, so you can, it's asymmetrical, so you can find a different way to do that, and maybe, 3.0 is gonna help with that, and on the mobile side, and then plus I can watch special stadium content on my phone that I can't watch at home. And that will help bring revenue, bring people, into the stadiums. It's not just watching on the big the big monitor board and the scoreboard and watching the 4K over here. I'm watching something else on my phone. Oh, I just saw that replay, almost real time, where everybody else is, if they get to see that replay, it's gonna be delayed by how many seconds.
Purchase an application so you can get your favorite player statistics.
Absolutely, yeah. There's so much, again, now you're going into content, like you brought up. There's just so much out there, and how do you, pull revenue off? Oh, he just did this. Do you want to buy this? Do you want to buy his jersey?
Well, considering that most millennials these days, they don't watch stuff on the big screen. I've got 5 nieces between the ages of 6 and 15. They never turn on the television. They watch everything on their iPhone or their tablet. And to Sinclair's credit, they've picked up on this. They started a new station called Circa, which is made by millennials, and they're doing their content gathering on iPads and the iPhone 6S, and that's how that station is getting their content gathered, through a phone.
Yeah.
Not even through a broadcast camera, and it's all reality-based stuff. I mean, the shows are short; they're 15 minutes because of the lack of attention span that millennials have.
And there goes, you don't have really nice cameras or lenses, so there's a depth of field is gone, but they don't care.
No, they don't care about that at all, because everything that they're watching is complete junk anyhow.
Right.
I mean, my nieces spend 10 hours a day flicking through YouTube videos, and you ask them, what's your favorite TV show? And they're like, oh, well, I've got a subscription to such and such on YouTube. It's not a TV show.
No.
As we're used to it.
But it's content.
It is content.
And these people are making so much money off of that, is they're personal broadcasters,
Yeah.
and they're making money off of creating YouTube. I've got a 9-year-old that wants to do it. That's his goal right now. He's like, I want to be a YouTuber, and I want people to watch me play Minecraft.
Right.
And he thinks he's going to make, hundreds of thousands of dollars off of this. But, he could, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the mindset on there. You're absolutely right. What can I do? But content is content. So how do you get content out to people, and how do you get some informatics back from people on the content, so you can be more, let's target you more. Let's get that. I mean, Google does it great. You do a search for something, and then all of a sudden you're surfing, and these ads come up that, wow, I was searching for that. And then you're on your phone, where you were looking for someplace to go, and you pick up your phone and go, and it's the distance to it. It's how many minutes. Like, wait, that was on my computer, now it's on my phone.
Yeah.
But millennials don't even think anything about it. Wait, how did they pull that up and put it there? What part of that is invasion of privacy? How much am I letting out?
And they really don't care about privacy. I mean, they have no guards. They're willing to put absolutely everything out there. And they expect that someone is going to be running analytics so that whatever content they're seeing is featured for them. They don't want to have to go searching for it. They want people to put the content they're looking for in front of them.
And that's actually going back to education. We want you to spoon feed me, give me this, give me that. 5 years ago, the students would go up and Google things, research things, watch YouTube videos on it, and how to figure out something. Now, and this is going back to what we talked about earlier, students go through and they get stuck and they stop. That's my stopping point. And one of my biggest phrases is, hey, did you look it up? Did you look how to get to the next step? Well, no.
Yeah.
Well, go take that step. I mean, Google it, find a YouTube video, find something that shows you, because it could be something as simple as an error for an application they're running. oh, I can't do it. I can't go any farther. And it's not that they can't, it's just that thought process isn't there. So, you know.
Whose fault's that? And whose fault's that? The educators?
I think it's a lot. It's not just the educators, it's society, it's the families, it's all of that. I mean,
Well, and there's companies like, you know, like there's Axiom out there, and all they do is gather all the data. So anytime you do a Google search, they're looking, gathering it, and saving it. It might never leave their database, but if we wanted to buy it, you can buy that data. You can buy that information. It's out there to be purchased. And, you know, it can be benefit to companies, you know, for personalization and things like that, you know, to do targeted promotions for, you know, different dealers or whatever over your air. But you're right. I mean, it's, so when you go to, you look up, you know, you look up air compressors on Google, then I go to my Facebook page and go there. I see, oh, look, air compressor ads.
What a coincidence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
how about that? That's a miracle. But, yeah.
that's the world.
But they're buying that information about my searches. So it is. I mean, you know, it is a little uncomfortable, but
It's also blockable.
it is blockable.
If you want to.
Turn it off, and I will tell you, Google will fight you tooth and nail as you sit there and go through the 100+ check blocks.
Right. Because
To,
they're getting big money for that info.
yeah, to turn around and tell them, no, you are not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do this.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. I mean, when I first found out the sheer volume of things that they had recorded off my cell phone when I was using voice to text,
Sure.
first thing I did was I eliminated it. I deleted it from them, and then I blocked them from getting it, and then I deleted the apps that did it off the phone. Because they didn't have my permission, they didn't clearly disclose it. And I was mind-boggled. I showed my next door neighbor exactly how much Alexa was recording of their household. And she thought I was completely bonkers until one day she was talking to her kids and they were discussing what they were going to have for dinner. And Alexa chimed in with recipes.
Yep. Just sits there. Sits there and
Yeah,
listens.
Alexa went out in the trash can the next day.
But going back to Dover, I mean, that's what these millennials are expecting.
That's what they
Put-
want.
Yeah,
Right.
They're completely
they don't care.
in the face of how we've done business and how we communicate with each other, and also they're changing the face of how we gather content and distribute it.
Yep. Look at Pokemon Go. How many kids have Pokemon Go on their phones? I mean, it's kind of died off, but boom, 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 boom. Everybody's going out everywhere. And how much data was collected from that, you know? And when you talk to them about it, they're like, they don't care. So, go ahead, Chuck.
So, I have a question.
We still have to get to Tony yet, too.
Oh, we have to,
Yeah.
Tony, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Dan,
I
answer
was,
your
I was
question.
gonna just ask Karl for an update on IP, on the IP showcase. You know,
Okay.
timings at some point, because maybe there's a few people interested in the room on, you know, how they're gonna roll out SMPTE 2110, so we can maybe wrap that up at the end, but.
Yeah, that sounds like a good, you want to
Take
talk
it
about it
now?
at the, no, I'm going to ask Tony a couple questions, then I'll come
Okay.
back to you. Are you good with that? And then that's how we'll wrap
That's
this up?
fine, whatever you want to do. fine.
Sounds good. Well, Tony, kind of, we've talked about this already, but how's the transition to IP changing the way that your signal and the way you transmit it, the way you send it out to people, and the way you distribute it and route it, you know, in-house? How is that, your mindset and that changing? Now you're going from the copper-based SDI signal to an IP-based over copper or fiber. And then I'm just going to keep going on with this. And at NAB, did you find any technologies that interested you or would help you deploy a more of an IP-based infrastructure?
So I think the transition for us, I'm scaring the hell out of all my maintenance engineers, for one. Because it is, it's a big shift. I mean, I have the opportunity to make the transition as we move into a brand new facility. So for that, I am very grateful because trying to migrate an existing station that's, you know, been in an SDI world for 50 years would be a challenge, would be a much bigger challenge. So I think we have it pretty easy because I got a clean slate. So we're able to build everything from the ground up. So from that part, I look at our transition as being pretty darn easy. It's always the easiest when you can just build new, walk away from the old place, and you know, you're done. Having to do it in-house is a little different. But I think our transition, and Karl and I were talking about this prior, that biggest risk I feel for us is in that knowledge base, is in the staff. And because again, we're taking broadcast engineers and telling them, you know, I've told my guys, hey, you know, we're building a brand new station, and by the way, there's not going to be a video router in it. and then I
Like
told
what?
my control room guys, hey, we're going to build this awesome new station, and by the way, there's not going to be a production switcher panel in your control room.
What about a patch panel?
Yeah, and patch panels. There's
Yeah.
there's no patch panel. So there's
There goes my job security.
well,
This is what I've known.
there's
this is-
two ways to look at it. Is one, there's that, like, you know, what am I going to do? And you know, thankfully, all my guys are like, all right, it's something new to learn, right? It's another protocol, and you know, everybody is making the strides to learn it. You know, I'm fortunate enough to come not from a broadcast background, but I'm a former IT guy. From desktop servers, networking, and information security consulting. I've done everything else, and then I kind of stumbled into broadcast. And then as I got into the industry in the early 2000s, it was a good time to start learning from the engineers what they did, and then in turn, you know, I told them what I knew. So it was a good, reciprocal relationship. So I think our biggest challenge, again, is learning. It's definitely, I think, on the people side and grasping the new fundamentals. You know, Tektronix has a lot of great gear to help, but we have to understand the protocols to use it, and then to everybody to wrap their heads around, you know, it's not a video signal anymore. It's literally, it's just a data packet. It's a packet with a payload. And you know, it's interesting in the video world to understand now. You have to know how those data packets actually get around, and then you also have to know what that payload is and how that payload gets assembled into actual meaningful video. So, you know, like I said, again, I'm grateful we have the opportunity to start with a clean slate. I think it's going to be a little easier for us. Our biggest challenge is just in that education and that learning curve. So we've definitely allotted for months of training.
great.
You know, once our station is kind of up and running, and we have a functional TV station, we're going to have at least one quarter to do nothing but poke around, get my guys through, you know, train, retrain, break stuff, learn how to fix stuff, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of bugs to work out, you know, as a first time as well. When it comes to NAB, you know, in looking at or getting excited about things that could help us, you know, really we're reliant a lot on the key vendors that, you know, we've chose to move forward with the project with. There's no doubt about it. I really didn't see a lot of, you know, other products outside of like a Tektronix or some other gear that could really help us facilitate that, right? We're going to be very reliant on the big networking guys and some of the other large companies that we've chosen to go with to get us there. Some of the most exciting things that, you know, I think I touched on earlier was how the industry is looking at virtualization and how they're changing, how they're approaching virtualization. I'm so glad to see that they're not just looking at a VMware server, or they're not just saying, you know what, we support Hyper-V. They're taking it a step further and looking at the microservices and looking at the Docker solutions and really completely rewriting and breaking up their product to make it fluid so it could run from anywhere. It's attractive for us because we look at how regionally, how the OWN television group is laid out. And we think about the possibility on just the eastern seaboard. We've got several stations in a close proximity that if one were to go down, we could easily back up the other from here. You know, we're in close proximity to DC. If DC had a problem and we're all in the same infrastructure and we're, you know, have that flexibility, sure, we'll pick up what they need, and we could literally run their newscasts out of our facility with, you know, minimal reconfiguration. That's the exciting part. Yeah.
And there's, to kind of add to that, a couple of years ago, Snowstorm, one of the NBC stations there at Hearst, not Comcast, but they and the Baltimore have a relay, they're both Hearst, and the snow collapsed the roof, and it did a lot of damage to that station there. But what was their backup plan? You know, we had some negotiations between the university and them, like, do we do it or not? Do you move some? But they went with their sister station in Baltimore. You know, let's take everything, you know, that we can from you and rebroadcast it. We'll do our news. You know, we have a quick, you know, little area here, a smaller area, so that's where we'll do our news and our typical broadcasts from. But that relationship there, you know, and moving to an IP-based world makes it so much easier rather than sending up a satellite and bringing it back down, or putting up, you know, if you go far enough up in the sky, you can put an antenna up and get Baltimore, so you can bring that in and retransmit it. But in the IP world, it's so much easier. Here, just sending it point to point, you know, over who knows what and how many hops you're going, but when you put quality of service in and you pay for it, you know, it's a key. You got to pay for it. You know, I'm going to get it to me, you know, in a certain quality that I'm expecting.
Yeah, it's especially exciting not only in disaster recovery situations, but you know, you think of natural disaster situations where, you know, if I'm in an IP-based world, then theoretically, if, you know, there was a natural disaster, or this, you know, we couldn't get to either a transmitter or we had to exit this facility, you know, then in that IP world, you look at, all right, I could potentially run, you know, a full production from almost any vehicle, and if I can get my content, you know, thanks to better compression algorithms, you know, with less bandwidth required, where I can get it over a cellular network without a hitch, you know, or other technologies that allow me to build like a private cellular network and have my own little slice of bandwidth. I can do almost anything from anywhere and not have to worry about, you know, my satellite downlink here, some of my playout servers here. It's just rerouting a stream from, you know, another central location and being able to gather various sources of video and information from around this area and just pipe them to someplace else. Say, you know what, yeah, this place doesn't exist anymore, so I either need to go to the cloud, I either need to go to one of my sister stations, or, you know, a whole variety of different ways. Just reroute it.
Right. What's my short-term backup plan? What's my long-term backup plan?
Right. You know, short-term backup plans right now, if this place were to burn to the ground, what do? Right? We have a satellite downlink, and we just route it straight out from the transmitter, and that's pretty much all we're going to be able to do. Our hands are tied until we get our, you know, playout system stood up somewhere else and everything up and running. But you think about that IP world, I'm not tied to that satellite downlink.
No, and those
anymore.
chunks of data are spread all over the place and duplicated and spread all over the place. So if that silo goes down, well, it's all in the other silos, and it's harder to hack into because not all the content is in one area either. Whereas if you're on site, it's all in one area. I get in, I'm getting into it, I'm finding it. But thank you. I think we're going to close up. We're going to go back to Karl, and we'll do with the SMPTE question.
Okay. My impression of the interop that was shown at NAB, I guess I have to be careful because all the vendors are under non-disclosure agreements, so I have to be as pedestrian as possible here with the explanation, not to tell you where any of the skeletons are buried. But I would say overall, because things are moving faster than I've ever seen in this industry, and I've been involved since 1972, the great thing is that everyone's playing nicely together. Usually it takes years with a lot of friction to get a standard through. We're almost there, I believe. A few weeks it'll be officially baked. And where we are right now, I would say interoperability is very good. Whenever you have interoperability, there's always interpretation issues. I interpret it this way, you interpret it that way. We're both standard, we're both following it, but there's different spins on how it's approached. I think even there, with all the interops that have been happening around the world, we're really in good shape. So if you can do any studying on SMPTE 2110, invest the time, get up to speed on it. It's going to happen. I think all the vendors are realizing this is it. The industry is realizing this is it. We have a direction. But the challenge, I think, what was really cool about the interop, with all the vendors playing nicely, was the fact they were showing redundancy. How much redundancy can you afford? I mean, how robust do you want to make your system? How resistant can you afford to do it? So what they were showing was an example of SMPTE 2022-7, where you have a primary and a backup. You put your hand in front of a laser, it took out one of the feeds. You put your hand in front of the other laser, it took out the other feed, and you can see how the -7 was doing a seamless switch between the two. That's a great thing, but how much redundancy do you want? How much do you want to avoid a single point of failure? That's the challenge. That's a business decision. I think another challenge we have is realizing we've added another layer of abstraction. Back in the good old days of analog, what you saw on the screen was happening at the physical layer. You look up a scope, you could see noise going through the signal. With audio, crosstalk, you could see that on a scope. Then we added SDI, so we added a digital layer, another layer removed from what's actually happening. Now we've taken SDI and chopped it up and put it into IP packets. So another layer of abstraction. So you need to have a multi-level, multi-layer view of what layer is the problem, what layer isn't the problem, and then figure out which black box is the problem, which black box isn't the problem. You find the one that is the problem. You say, my input is good, my output is bad. Vendor X, Y, or Z, we have something to talk about. So we've got to get more in the mode of doing screen captures, because the vendors need our help to fix the problems. You can't just say, hey, it doesn't work. Because the situation you have in your facility, even with the interops that we saw at NAB, this configuration might not exist anywhere else on this planet. So you're talking to a vendor, you have to be very up to speed to help them fix the problem. You can't just take out your greenie tweaker and give a pot a quarter turn anymore and the problem's fixed. You're actually at the 1s and 0 level. So different layers of abstraction were further removed. So once again, the IT people come into play, the broadcast people, because we still have Luma, we have Chroma, we have aspect ratios, we have ancillary data, we have loudness issues, all the other compliance issues. Those have not gone away. But now with the challenge with IP that it always comes down to is smoothness. We're data people. How long does it take to load a website? Whatever. How long does it take to load a document from point A to point B? Whatever. We're not in the whatever business. Every pixel needs to be here at the right time, in the right order. Every packet in the right order, not out of order, not corrupted, not dropped. So when you're talking to IT people, if you drop a packet, oh well, I'll resend it. There is no resending in this business. Everything's got to be here right now, right here in the right order. So the interop at NAB was good news for everybody. But once again, study up on 2110. Also, the flavor of the day was where HDR was really in style this year, where last year HDR at NAB was a West Coast Hollywood digital cinema thing. The broadcasters are really jumping on the bandwagon with HDR. It's the best bang for the buck. Every eye can see it on every screen, regardless of the size and the distance. So I think overall, anything you can see on your Google searches as far as the interop, be studying that, stay current, because we're making this up as we go. And we're all in the same boat. Stay current, stay on top of it, yes.
Let me ask you this, and kind of circling back.
Yes.
Okay, how's the cloud helping, make this, these discussions and go faster? Are you interacting in like a cloud-based, like a WebEx or something like that? Are you having online meetings? Has that helped the whole thing go faster, so you're not flying to different places and having meetings and waiting? Well, we'll meet
Sure.
in 2 weeks. And
Yeah, go to the SMPTE website. There's all kinds of good webinars that you can catch live or you can catch deferred time. I mean, Tektronix, we're doing that. I'm working with SMPTE right now to do a series of webinars on IP and PTP. I'm doing local events. I do all-day seminars. So yes, the whole thing it's an evolution. So as far as the cloud, it's born an IP packet, delivered an IP packet where it's in-house, an enterprise system. It is virtualized on a piece of generic hardware somewhere, or if it's in the cloud, somebody else's stuff. It's all an IP packet. The technology is the same. Is it my stuff or somebody else's stuff? But you know what? It's my content, it's my business case, and things have to work. And training, I think, is the most important part, because the staff, we have to make it work. Nobody else is going to do it for us. If you can't reboot it, you have to know what to do next. Yes, sir.
Quick question, Karl.
Yes.
And to Mark. Who's teaching this in higher ed?
Not enough
Let me
people.
say this, who's teaching what?
We're making it up as we go.
Exactly, but at some
Right.
point, we've got to get into a flow of training the up and coming.
I'm working with Loyola University right now as we speak to help get us to that point. Now that Millersville is officially on board, I'll be investing my time. I live 2 hours away. I have family in Reading. I live in Virginia, so you're kind of on my way everywhere I go. So that's good. The people in this room, we're going to have to do it. Speak up at SMPTE meetings, get involved with Millersville, the local temple, or whoever you can get involved with here locally. We have to do it, because nobody else has this figured out yet.
If I've got a high school kid who wants to go into broadcast, where's he gonna go to be able to get an education?
What does he want to do in broadcast? That's the one
It's
thing.
They
And
don't
internship.
know
also,
at this point.
Internships.
It's
that-
internship.
Exactly.
Because the problem is, outside of the few lucky, most of it's going to be a migration. Like in our IP, like we're looking to do obviously Japan, and next is QVC US. It's got to be a migration from SDI, because you will have SDI sources. So everything's going to be in this hybrid state for probably 5 or so years, because what I'm finding is there's manufacturers that saying we will deliver you an ST2110 in August. I'm like, so I can buy a product that doesn't exist now, basically. I'm like, that doesn't, yeah, that doesn't sound, yeah, trust me. That's not Chuck, but but there's other manufacturers. So it's going to be a hybrid state, and there's going to be a lot of gateways doing a lot of conversion in these systems. So it's going to be hard. It will be a challenge, and Mark's going to face a challenge to how do you build that curriculum? Because we don't know it yet.
Well, it was a question, but
Mhm.
I'm gonna answer.
Microphone, please.
Yeah.
I had a question, but
I'm trying to answer your question. What I saw on the floor was a lot of startups in large companies and small companies with data analytics. And just in our company, because we've had so many experiences with it, everything's a multicast. So your whole production workflow is in a multicast mode. And it's touching 12, 13 pieces of equipment. You have no idea where that piece of content went in the multicast. And so data analytics gets involved. I would highly suggest any student that wants to get into broadcast would look into this, because it's something that you're really going to need. In the old days, we would lay out the schematics. It came in on this end, it went out on that end, and every piece of gear went through because there's a cable to it. Today, these data analytics record the information for hours on end. And then you said, hey, at 10 o'clock, I saw a glitch. You then pump in that IP address and you pull up bar graphs, what virtual cloud and process that went out to Denver that did an up-down cross and came back. This is where it's going, and I just wanted to mention that if that's hopefully answers your question, that's what they should get into. And I saw a ton of companies starting these data analytic programs. And Tony, I don't know if from your world, just in IT, what other companies that just do it, not in video space, but like in the IT space, if they're just doing all these switching, maybe Statmon, or is there some other companies out there?
It's interesting, because I've been badgering my IT manager here for a year now, and Amador as well, on analytics, right? Because as we look into the new world where we're going, we not only need analytics on the network, on the video gear, but everything else, all of all of our VMs that we're going to have, all of our other gear, our voice over IP phone system, our IP-based intercom system, our IP-based two-way radio system, our IP-based TV system, right? Everything that we're doing is IP-based, and as such, there's logs that are generated.
Yeah.
Lots and lots and lots of logs. The new telematics program, we're looking for our fleet and all the data that we can gather from there to make better maintenance decisions. You're right, you hit the nail on the head where analytics are going to be so important. And, to answer the question, or sort of answer on, how do you get trained?
What part of the puzzle do you want to be?
To me, I always look, at least now, I always look at just go straight for an IT core, right? Start there. Start with the fundamentals. Like I said, I'm here as a former IT guy, and I've worked now, in broadcast, manufacturing, financial, and there was one other industry I was a part of. But the IT principles have remained the same across every industry. And now I see them slowly infiltrating this industry. So I think you have to start there. If you don't know what you want to do in television, try to learn the technical basics of IT. Unless you're maybe more on the creative side, then I don't know what to tell you. I always say it's more fun to be behind the camera, but it's just start with IT fundamentals. And honestly, for any youngster out there, if they know IT fundamentals, if they know the protocol stack, and they know, some of the basics, they'll be able to do just about anything.
And I'll
But
add to
you're-
that. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, you're absolutely right, because soon, broadcasting is just going to be a discipline within IT. Just like networking, just like everything else, it's just going to be a discipline within IT. Because, it's all systems now come with Ethernet jacks. Everything's connected. Everything, like in our facility, everything goes through data mine. So it's there now. And to be honest with you, we struggle to find young engineers. They don't exist. And the problem with that is if you're a technical person, you're going to go, and if you're in the IT track against a broadcast engineer, you're going to want to be in the IT track because fundamentally you're going to make more money. You're going to have an easier schedule. You don't have the urgency. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge that we face at QVC, not only here, but around the world. The only place that I have found that is turning out off the shelf, like young kids that are broadcast engineers is in the UK. There is a school there that turns out broadcast engineers. These are kids coming out with IT backgrounds, broadcast backgrounds, and they learn from the ground up, and they're great hires. But we don't have that in the States. And in Japan, it's a whole different ball of wax, because those kids come out, they get hired into a company with, they have education on potential, and then they're trained. So you get hired into a company in Japan, you're in that company for life until you want to leave. So they invest in the people and train them for the needs that they fill. So we struggle, at least at QVC, finding young kids coming in with
Let me throw this
engineering.
out. Hudson University in Bangor, Maine has a great program, 2-year, 4-year program. All the kids have multiple job offers. Cruise Boats hired a whole bunch of people recently, because Cruise Boats have all kinds of video facilities, but I support that curriculum
That's
up there.
great,
But
yeah.
there's not many, but we need more. But Hudson
Definitely.
University, Bangor, Maine, New England School of Communications, that's the best one that I've seen. Hands dirty, make it happen type television, people.
Could you send me that
I will do
information?
that.
Because
It's
they could
easier
use
said than
interns
done.
and hire them right out.
But
I'd be glad to.
Are the traditional systems integrators keeping up with this? And are you using a traditional system integrator, or is it a whole new breed of system integrators that are out there? Who are you using?
So we have diversified, and they're definitely keeping up. You know, in some ways, you know, like Karl said, we're all in this together and we're all moving quick. There's some aspects of it where, you know what, yeah, we are all doing on-the-job training. There's no question about it. It's a very rapid pace. You know, we're designing around -6 and -7, and like you said, 2110, maybe it'll be ratified in August.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll just shift gears and try to shoehorn that in.
It's an easy conversion
before
from
we
where
go
you're at.
live. Yeah. So, but no, the integrators, I think, are seeing the opportunity that's out in front of them. Because I think they have a more diverse talent talent pool there that they have to die from, and they see the opportunity. They understand that, you know what, this is where the industry is going, and if we have the expertise, if we nab some of the IT guys, we nab some of the old broadcast engineers, we kind of meld them together and can offer that, I think they all know that they're going to be getting a ton of business in this conversion.
And they have an advantage. And their advantage is they don't have day jobs. It's their job.
Right.
So they can focus and train. I mean, we use Diversified, we use Beck a lot, and you know, they are up to speed because they can carve out that time. Your systems guys, our systems guys, it's hard. They work 40-hour-a-week jobs keeping us on the air. So it's a lot to ask because no one has an abundance of engineers sitting around.
And they get to hop from one job to the next, right?
Exactly.
Once they're done with ours, I mean, we've already had discussions on what would we do different. We haven't even implemented yet, and we're already talking about, you know, the 22-7. Do I really need with that level of redundancy with our dual core and some of the things that we've made design decisions on? And once those design decisions are made, we're moving forward with it, right? You have to stop at some point and say, all right, this is what we're going to implement, and we're going to make this work. And that's where we're at. But, you know, literally, we've already looked at, well, if I were to do this all over again, would I really have done that? So the integrators have that opportunity. They're going to do it, and then the next station that they do after ours, they'll have the tweaks and they'll have that experience, and that's something that a lot of us, you know, broadcasters, we don't have the luxury of. So the integrators are definitely, they'll be sitting in the catbird seat.
I'm working with system integrators now, and they're making it up as they go, like everybody else, in all honesty. And one of the majors, I'm working on a traveling road show. We're going to be taking around the country at some point to share. Here's a configuration, here's how it works, here's what happens when it doesn't work, and here's how you troubleshoot it. So this is what I'm spending my summer doing right now, and looking forward to sharing what we learn.
And Tony, you didn't say, or I might have missed it, but related to your move, are you guys going to go 4K?
No, we'll still be in a 1080 world. I mean, we'll be format agnostic. We'll have a lot of 4K equipment. We'll be ready.
Infrastructure?
Yeah, but we're not gonna, there's no reason to.
And to broadcasters like QVC, does HDR or a wide color gamut play a role?
Yeah, it's interesting because one thing coming out of NAB that, and this is my own personal opinion, is how it seems like the globe is being carved up. The Asian markets like Japan, Korea, Vietnam, like that part of the world, definitely looking for 4K. The EU is definitely looking at HDR. Same with the US. I think the TV manufacturers are pushing it, but talking to the distributors, and especially in the US market, they're not anticipating being able to deliver 4K, except your OTT guys and things like that. And then that's 4K is up to interpretation, right? Because really, the only thing that is 4K in that stream is the first frame of black. Then everything else kind of drops off because of bandwidth restrictions. So, so for us, especially QVC, the extended color palette is what we need. Because right now, I mean, we're broadcasters, but we're in it to sell product. So if you have, of course, no, I'm not wearing a color, but if you're wearing like a purple or something, it doesn't look right because 720 can't produce that. So that, I think our next step in QVC-US would be going to an IP infrastructure all the way through. I mean, currently, you know, we're using IP, we have a hybrid router, but we're using IP just for control, you know, but not carrying video. So the next step for us is to move to maybe to 1080p, go IP, and introduce HDR, because a lot of, you know, the TV industry is pushing the 4K because they want to sell TVs. But I think, I mean, this is strictly my opinion, and I maybe read too much and try to connect dots that aren't connecting, but I feel that UHD is going to morph, especially in the States, to HD HDR. Because on your normal TV, you look at a good HD HDR signal against a 4K, it's hard to tell. I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, I'm 52 years old. I don't see that well to begin with. It's really hard to tell unless you're getting into giant big displays.
Yeah, or you're sitting 3 feet from the television.
Exactly.
And, you know, that point of diminishing returns on that 4K goes away, 6 feet away from the television.
Yeah.
And that's assuming you got a 50 or 60 inch television. So I think, you know, I completely agree that a good 1080p HDR.
Yeah, that's going to look good.
Yeah.
What about your tablet or phone? An HDR on a tablet or
Yeah,
phone, as opposed to it's right there in your face, the colors are right there.
The displays are beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, and Japan's a different story because that's government driven. Yeah, so the government, and why the main reason QVC Japan is going 4K is strictly for channel placement, because in Japan there's rules to what you can broadcast. So there's it's called the government organization is called Mothers for Safe Broadcasting. So
Can't argue with that.
It's true. So in their rules for us being home shopping, you cannot be on the same channel for more than 6 hours. So we jump around the dial. So talking about master control issues, we jump around the dial depending on day part. So with us being able to go 4K, since we're one of the first 4 broadcasters to do it, and we're the only broadcaster not to do upconvert, it gives us a guaranteed channel placement that we do not have to move, because they're removing all those rules that will prevent us from going. So they started out, they offered 12 slots, only 4 broadcasters went for them. They're guaranteeing that the next Olympics that are there, I guess it's 2020, will be in 4K. The only difference between this transition and their HD transition, when they went to HD, the government gave every citizen a voucher for an HD TV. And if you owned an apartment building, or if you owned a cable company, the government paid for the upgrade to your systems to be able to handle HD. They're not doing that for 4K, at least not yet. So it's a completely different ballgame, because talking to the ESPN guys, because we follow ESPN. You know what I mean? If they go 4K, we look to go 3 or 4 years after them. Same way we did our HD transition, same way we did our digital transitions. Just seems how it works. And they're not looking at it. So they build trucks, but trucks are easy. You know, you can do 12 gig 4-wire in a truck. You can just add more trucks to keep your weight where you need them. In at least in our space, the 4-wire we just don't have the room for the cable management when you start looking at that.
Has to be there. Pete Putnam at last month's SMPTE said, they're not even making any more non-4K glass.
Right.
But there's a lot of other pieces.
Mm-hmm.
When you start putting some of those things in there and making HDR work with it and all that kind of stuff, all of a sudden you'll have demand created. But that's down there.
Yeah. And then you're still limited by cable, right? You can only do 7 gigs on that little piece of copper coming into your house. So until
you figure out something else.
Until we figure out
Maybe
something else.
the ATSC 3.0. I can get more bandwidth to your house.
Yeah, I mean, you can.
What can I do with that?
Theoretically carry a 4K signal over that.
And at that point, our government's not planning on giving out vouchers either. Whereas when we
Right.
went to digital, here's your voucher. Here's your
Yeah.
$40 off a converter.
Yeah.
They're not going to do anything for ATSC 3.0.
No.
Like you want it, go for it.
We've talked so much about, you know, what impressed us the most at NAB. I think one of my biggest disappointments was, again, this year after year, is I always read so much about H.2.65 and these better compression algorithms that are going to really help us get, you know, these large 4K, you know, video down to us in an efficient manner. And again, this year I looked around and I'm like, okay, nobody's doing it yet, right?
That's an excellent point.
You know, I even look at it as I don't even care about 4K, but I want that compression technology so that now I can actually pump out a really good 1080 signal over the cellular modems and the bonded cellular that we're doing. I mean, it's gotten a lot better, but you know, man, they've been promising the H.2.65 and all this really great compression for years now, and still nothing. So I hope that maybe that helps.
Look at the Tektronix stuff. They started playing around with the 265.
Started playing around with, not.
Live view used the H.264 at NAB. H.265 at NAB that was operating supposedly.
Yeah, supposedly. That's. I mean, there was a little bit more of it, which was nice, but I don't know. I'm just waiting for the year where everybody's like, "Oh yeah, H.265, we got that. It's here."
Looks great.
You know, look at this. Your 1080 signal now we can cram down into like a 500 kilobit stream without any quality loss, right? That's what I want to hear.
Save you a lot of money.
And what do you give up in the artifacts?
You know, what do I give up? A little delay. What was that?
Apple announced it will do 265 in the next product release starting in the fall.
You know, it's interesting you say that because right now, almost probably about the last 18 months to 24 months, any cell phone that was released, they're all H.265 ready. All of the handheld devices are. Every single one we got up here has that capability and the decoder in there. But that's it. The cell, you know, the mobile.
Just no signals.
Yeah. TVs? No, TVs don't.
Yeah.
What's that?
The end-to-end solution doesn't exist.
No.
Right.
As soon as there's one brick blocking the road, it throws out the whole solution.
And the same thing
Sure.
happened with H.264. And it became ubiquitous after a number.
What's the holdup? I guess I'm missing that point. Is it a licensing issue or?
No, I think everybody is still complaining that it requires too much computing power and they've got to re-engineer everything. And the whole computing power thing is, come on, computing power really? That's what we're.
We're all waiting for quantum computers.
Yeah.
It's parallel
That'll be
processing.
H.266 by that point.
So I think we have time for one more question.
GPUs. Come on, people.
I think we're good. Thank you, gentlemen, very
Thank
much
you.
for coming out.
A lot of fun.
All great answers.